Thank you for being here, Amy. And as a way of just getting started, would you tell us a little bit about your family? How many kids you have and their ages and names?
Okay, I'm married for 15 years almost, and I have two boys, Trevor who's 9 and Tyler who's 8.
9 and 8, okay. And what I'd like you to do to begin with is to think back to when you were 8 or 9. What did you know about smoking? Did your parents, had they talked to you about it? Did you have any opinions about smoking when you were that age?
I did. My parents didn't smoke, but my aunt and uncle, who we spent a lot of time with holidays with, they always smoked. And I just guess it was just one of those things. I noticed it. My mom and dad never formally sat down and said smoking's not the right thing to do, but I think they led by example because they didn't smoke, and my aunt and uncle were the only ones who did really, and then as time went on, they actually stopped. But they did smoke a lot for a lot of my childhood.
What'd you tell your kids about why it's not the right thing to do for them?
Well, we talked about it's unhealthy, it could hurt them, it smells. It's just basically the biggest thing was it's very unhealthy for them.
Did they seem to respond to that?
They do.
argument?
I mean, I think, we've talked about it several times, and they know that's not the thing to do. It's unhealthy, it smells, it's expensive. Any way to bring it in, we said, if you want to buy this, you can't buy that. If you want a nice toy, you can't buy the cigarettes, kind of a thing. So it started at a young age just because it was there in front of us several times a year.
Yeah, it's good to give multiple reasons. The old days of don't do it because I'm your parent and I said so, that may work while they're young, but as they get older, it's their values that are going to determine whether they smoke or not smoke. So you need to get in there at the attitude and the value level, what you're doing. I mean, giving them a number of reasons. You don't know what's going to really make the difference to a particular child.
Right.
And in this economy these days, the financial argument
do you want a Game Boy or do you want a cigarette?
may not be a bad way to go. I wish just talking about the health issues were enough. But a lot of times with kids, what happens down the road in terms of the health problems, which may not emerge for 30 or 40 years, may not matter as much as the here and now. If it's smelly and stinky and makes your teeth yellow and your clothes smell, and as kids get older, there are other arguments that you can bring to that. If you found out that your kids, as they got older, were hanging around other kids that did smoke, what would you say about that?
Well, I would hope that we gave them a strong sense of self, I mean, I know that kids get older, they want to be what their friends do, they want to be cool, and I do sometimes worry about that because my older son especially, he wants to fit in like every other preteen, teenagers, and I try to reinforce that, even if you're friends with them, they can do that, and you would try to tell them not to, but you have to stand on your own and be your own person and not do it. And I know it's hard to, but you still have to remember all the things we've talked about and remember all the things that's wrong and try to be that person to say no. I'm not saying you don't have to be friends with them. I'm not saying you have to leave them behind, but even if you're one in the crowd, be the one to say no and do whatever you need to do to not do it. And I always tell them you don't have to not be friends with them because, smoking is not, the person doesn't bad. The habit is bad, not the person. And that's why I try to tell my sons that, just because they're doing a bad habit doesn't mean they're a bad person. You just try to encourage them to break the bad habits.
And do you feel like you and your husband are on the same page, giving the same message to your kids? And do you think that's important?
Absolutely. My boys look up to my husband a ton. They just love him, and he does the sports with them. So they see him as a great role model in the sense where he's very healthy, he's active, he takes care of himself, and he definitely doesn't smoke. So they see that in him too. So he leads by example too. Okay.
And do you feel like the two of you have a strong influence with your kids because of that relationship that you're
I believe so.
about?
I hope so. I mean, we spend a lot of time with our children. We are active with them both at school, in sports and at home. So we hope that what we say goes, and we give them certain rules, and 99% of the time they follow them. I mean, we strive for 100, but I'm good with 99.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is that a lot of parents make the mistake of believing that they can just dictate values to their kids. You won't do it because we say you won't do it. And they don't realize, as you and your husband seem to realize, that your rules and your ability to discipline and influence your kids really come out of your relationship with them. When you spend the time playing with them, doing sports, talking to them, supporting them, encouraging them, doing family activities and things together, you really build up your credibility.
Right.
So when you talk about smoking being harmful, or we don't want you to do this or that, it comes from a relationship that matters to them.
Right. Oh,
if they just see you, the only time you ever talk to me is to say no and to yell at me and to, you know, you're never there for me, that could actually backfire when you tell them not to do something.
Right.
Yeah. So it's great that you're spending so much time building the relationship.
We try.
Yeah. Any other advice that you can think of to give parents? What would be if you could share one thing that you think you'd like to recommend to other parents, what do you think that would be?
I think the best thing for me personally and to other parents is just to constantly talk to them about it. You know, just constantly reinforce, reiterate that smoking is such a bad thing in a lot of ways, not just physically, but financially and socially. And I think it's nice as it's become not as socially acceptable for smoking, so that's always a good thing, just because of the outside influences. But just to constantly keep talking to your kids. Because like you were saying, when you are able to talk to your kids about not smoking, it leads into not being able to talk to your kids about drugs and other things that may lead into them as they get older. So I think just keeping the line of communications open with your children is honestly probably the best thing.
A lot of good advice. A lot of things that you said really are right on, Amy.
Hopefully.
I appreciate you sharing that. And thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.